we'll now have the discussion about will we cut down, we'll have to cut down on cars and planes as a discussion in this panel of people we have gathered together today, and they'll all present themselves and their take into this debate. I'm here because I work with politics in region of Midtjylland, and there I also work with how to cut down on traffic because we have the problems with the climate. And yeah, I'll have to say I'm sorry for my English if it's a bit rusty. I normally do German as my first foreign language. I hope it'll work out. But now I will present our panel, and we'll start with Thomas Krebs.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yes. My name is Thomas Krebs. I am a CEO in association in the automotive business. My focus is the whole aftermarket. That means when you buy electric vehicle and it breaks down or you have an accident or it has to be recycled, I take everything from the accident and repair to scrap. I sit in the Danish government's ministerial working group about electric cars. My main focus is to establish law on the EU basis and in Denmark. I sit also as a senior technical advisor for the largest organization within car crash repair in the world and have a cooperation with many countries. I work a lot about the problems with lithium-ion batteries, high volt, fire, recycle problems, all these issues, and education of transport people, education of technicians, finding ways to recycle batteries the right way, distinguishing fire when they burn, how to build buildings. I also am involved in the ferry transport of electric vehicles, so it's a very large area.
Very complex here.
Thank you.
And now it will be Pedro Castro.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Pedro, and I work as an airline consultant. I want to ask you a question. How many governments and how many airlines do you think have come up to me and asked me, help us reducing, help us being a better airline for the environment? Zero. Zero. And yet, I think we feel, all of us feel, that governments are telling us how important this is. And you even have airlines that have marketing messages trying to give you the impression we're flying green, and you can compensate your emissions. I don't know how. I don't know where that money is going to, but I can tell you what they are really good at is to give us vloegskam. Am I saying the right word?
Yes, you do. Yeah. Shame,
right?
Yeah.
So you, from Copenhagen, are now supposed to feel so guilty about taking a plane that you're going to have your vacation in Aarhus. You're no longer going to Gran Canaria because you have to fly. Naughty you, bad girls and boys who fly. You are supposed to go to Aarhus or to somewhere, Billund, Legoland, whatever, in your vacation. And that's the recipe for a better environment. Wrong.
Okay, that will be very interesting also to hear if you have a different take. Can you fly without spoiling our environment? I'll ask you later. Now it's Charlotte Burgess.
Yes, well, the questions of this debate, whether planes and cars, they have a role to play in the future transportation system.
Thank you so much. I think obviously it's quite a rhetorical question because yes, they will still play a role in our future transportation system. I just checked that if you want to take the bus to Helsund, which is like, I believe, 15 kilometers away from here, it will take you 1.5 hours.
Yes.
So it is impossible if you live outside the big cities to rely on public transportation. But obviously we have to make the fuel-based transportation a lot more efficient. We have to, as politicians, we have to set demands on improving the fuel efficiency. And I think we've come a long way doing that. Yeah, I think I'll stop there and then we can
Well,
keep on the discussion.
it sounds really good. Now I just have to ask you, what is the solutions? Well, we'll have to ask you that later. Now we are going to Jens Peter Hansen, who is the chairman of the Danish Cyclists.
My name is Jens Peter Hansen. I'm a city council member in the municipality of Randers, that's just neighbor to Mariager, where I'm representing the Liberal Party. And besides, I'm president of the Danish Cyclist Federation. We try to have more people cycle more often. We are not actually an interest organization for cyclists. We are an organization that try to improve conditions for society. Cycling is society's Swiss army knife. No matter what kind of problem society do have, cycling can help to solve these problems. And that's what we're working on.
Well, it's like a religion, I think.
No, it's the reason I mentioned I was city council member, I was a member of the Liberal Party. Liberal Party, that's normally people that do their calculations in spreadsheets and put a lot of value on economical facts and stuff like that. And that's why I am so eager to have more people cycle more often, because it's a lot of money to save for society when people do that. It's a very, very, very good business case. And of course, that's why EU Franz Timmermans says we can't do anything seriously about transportation if we do not include cycling. He tells it every time he makes a speak. We have to put cycling up front if we have to solve the problems in our cities and in our countries.
And of course, it can be a very good thing if you're going on holiday. If you're going from Copenhagen to Aarhus, you can do a bike. We can't do if you're going to go Gran Canaria.
I went to Copenhagen Friday. I took my bike to Copenhagen and I took the train coming back.
Okay,
yesterday.
I can see. I can tell you that I couldn't go to Aarhus and here on bike. But I think that's interesting. And of course, you're right. It's also healthier to do a bike. And I will say, I know that Charlotte, living in Copenhagen, there a bike is really, really comfortable. But there's also other places where we can't use a bike, or is there? What do you say, Thomas? Is that really the answer of everything? Is that don't do cars, don't do planes, now we do bike?
I think biking is a good health issue. It cleans the mind, it cleans the problems out of your brain, it gives your muscles when you have, let's say, a realistic distance from home to work.
And what is realistic distance?
Yeah, I mean, my wife, she cycles every day 12, 14 kilometers forth and back of an electric bike, and it's super. I have a bike. I don't cycle so much because I work 40 kilometers away from my home. I have to go out to visit our members, business meetings. I mean, going with the bike, you know, I mean, forget it. Sweating with your computer and everything, no. So transportation is important in my point of view. It has always been important, especially if you look globally on transportation. We cannot survive without it, because most of the goods, most of the things we are using in everyday life are coming from far away. I mean, and if we don't get these goods, we have to eat potatoes and sheep and whatever.
That's a good argument. I think, what about you, Pedro? What do you say to the people who say we have to have flight and we have to do it green because there are things that will have to get from far away, and it's not, you cannot transport it by car and not always by ship. But can we do it, or will you also argument that we'll have to do planes also in the future?
Well, definitely. I mean, I would not exclude any mean of transportation. I would actually make them better.
Okay, and how? Planes are really, really bad if we're going up.
I can tell you how we shouldn't be doing, and that's what we've been doing in the past 2 years. 30 billion euro were thrown into the airlines of Europe, and I'm only talking about Europe, with the permission of the European Union. So, because of COVID, some airlines, and I want to emphasize some airlines, SAS was an example. They got 1 billion euro here, and it's not like SAS is any better now, as you probably know. So, we have thrown into these old-fashioned companies a lot of money to do the exact same thing they were doing until now. There were no demands in return in terms of environmental objectives or targets. There is no measurement of, oh, have you improved your emissions footprint? There is no exchange in that. So basically, we are giving money to keep something that we know shouldn't be going on forever.
But what are we doing? Because we can all say that what they're doing with the fuel now, it's not good. But can you do electric planes?
Well, that part, the science and is working on those solutions. I think science proved to be very efficient when it came to vaccination, for example. So when you feel the pressure, when you know that you need something immediately, then science responds to it. If instead of putting 13 billion euro in something that you know it's not going to last, if you put that money, that amount of money in finding solutions for the future, maybe that future will come back to you much quicker than what's happening right now. Because what is happening right now is that you're telling in 2050, in 2030, in 20-something, we will be able to do something better. And until then, there is no really short-term alternative. Until then, I can tell you, for example, in Lisbon, we're talking about building a second airport. A second airport in the city of Lisbon. And I'm very curious to know how the government and how the EU, that is funding, the EU will be funding that second airport, how that goes together with reducing emissions, how can we possibly be able to comply with Fit for 55, the European plan to cut emissions, if you keep on building the infrastructure, the very same infrastructure that is causing the problem. We should be talking about reducing.
So you are saying that we should not support infrastructure who is with plane, and there, on the other hand, we should invest in another part of how to fly more efficient.
Public money should be now going to the future, not to the past. If you are Bill Gates, you have a lot of money, and you want to do an airline, well, you know, good luck.
Well, he has done malaria in Africa. It's now gone. So perhaps we could ask him if he wouldn't give us a plane who didn't pollute. So Charlotte was there first, and then
I
Jens Peter.
would say that I very much agree with you, Pedro, that we have to have a diverse transportation sector. There are many reasons that people transport themselves and they transport goods. So I very much agree that we need different kinds of transportation. I would also like to mention trains. That is also an area where we can do more in Europe to increase the different kinds of the interconnections of the big cities in in Europe. I'm also thinking buses, long-distance buses that run on biofuels or electricity. We saw this summer it was a chaotic situation in the European airports within the European air transportation because we had the shortage of people in the planes and on the ground because of the whole sector is lagging behind because they fired all the people during COVID. So it was, I think any of you who tried to travel in Europe by plane this summer experienced delays with the planes, delays with the luggage and everything. And I actually have some friends, they decided to go by bus. I have a friend, she was going to Italy. She decided to go by bus because she knew that she would be able to get there on time. So I think there will be some, and these buses, they can also depart from areas that are less populated, less dense, that is not economically.
But Charlotte, how do they get to Washington D.C. from here if you don't go by?
Obviously, that is not possible. I would also just like to say that you talk about this, that we should feel guilty when we fly, that there's something, no, you didn't, but you talked about that's kind of
Shame, the climate shame, yes.
That's the discussion, that we're made to feel guilty when we fly. That if you look at the amount of CO2, the role that the airlines or civil aviation, the role in the total emission of CO2 is quite low. I mean, it is transportation on the ground, and it is mainly also from cars, from private cars. So I think that's where we really have to do something. We still have costs, but we have to make them more efficient and try harder.
Okay, then I'll give it to Hans Peter, and after that I want to hear you, Thomas, about what Charlotte's saying. You do cars. Can you do them better? And now it's Hans Peter.
I fully support we have to change the way we invest in infrastructure. There was an American guy, Mumford, back in 1950s. He said, if you think that you can do something about congestion by building more roads, that's the same as you think you can do something about obesity by losing your belt. You're okay, you'll have more space in the first place, but as long as you don't change your habits, you will hit the belt again. And that's exactly what happens when we build more roads. Okay, more families buy more cars, and they will fill up. And the same about planes. Your example is really good. People realize, okay, it's not so pleasant to use an airplane, so we take something else. When the roads get filled up, people find other ways. A lot of people, if I live in a city where there's a lot of congestion every morning, they go and buy an electrical bike, maybe a speed pedelec 45 kilometers. I was on my bike to Aarhus a couple of days ago, and two guys, they just overtook me, and I'm riding fast normally, but 45 kilometers on an e-bike, they can easily do 30, 40 kilometers, no problem. So we have to, okay, of course we need cars, of course we need trucks, of course we need roads. We just don't need to make more of them.
So it's habits. It's all about habits?
It's all about habits. Because here in Denmark, for example, 50% of all car trips out and back is less than 10 kilometers. 10 kilometers. Of course, there's families that have kids and they are not able to walk or cycle, or a lot of excuses, but 50% of all trips, there is a huge potential.
And that's actually convenience then. If you could go 2 kilometers and get your bread from the bakery, but drive. It's raining.
The car is just outside. You just have to grab the key. You don't even have to check the weather forecast, if it's raining or not. You just sit out, and no matter it's minus 10 or it's raining or whatever, you just sit in the car.
But Thomas, now then, when next time when I'm going from Aarhus North, where people are actually coming in by cars in the morning, I've done at least the 15 years where I've lived there, and it's growing.
Yeah.
So I also have a car, and I use it also for buying stuff. I have teenagers at home. They're eating a lot, so I also have to do my grocery, what do you call it, to buy groceries, and I couldn't carry it at home. I couldn't. So what do we do, Thomas? Not only by the cars, but also that they are guiding around on the streets.
The traffic is growing. We are sitting a long time in cars and spoiling or losing money, because money makes the world go round. It won't change. My problem is that so many people are looking towards energy. I am gone away because I am the guy who gets the knives in the back, because I'm not always pink towards electric cars, and now I bought a shield, so it doesn't matter anymore. But I want to change the discussion from vehicles to energy. And the biggest problem to me is, where do we get the energy from? And how do we get the energy out there where we need it? And also in the outer bags of the country. Because our electricity network is old. I just wait until it breaks down. When everybody has a heat pump, a large computer at home, a tally, the kitchen is running, 2 electric cars are charging, and everything is breaking down. Yeah. So to me, it's important to have a realistic view on where we get the energy, and when we know that,
But now I have to
and how to distribute it, then we can increase electric cars. But until we know that, I think we should be careful, because our infrastructure can't handle it.
But now I have to ask you, you live in Copenhagen. There are no mills there. Windmøller.
Yeah.
Windmills there. They are all standing on the west coast where there's no people
No.
living.
There are loads in the water, yeah. But I mean, the thing is, now they have discussed or taken the first step to put 350 or 400 meter high windmills on the EU base. So, to me, you know, many of us have a garden tube, this size, yeah? And they use the garden tube to water the plants. And then imagine you put 100 bars in the garden tube. The water won't go through because there's not space enough. So to me is, you put a large energy source somewhere in the water. How do you bring the power to the people? Because in Denmark, the sun reflector companies, they're building sun reflectors all the way, but they cannot deliver the power to the system because the cables and everything is too small.
So that's where the infrastructure.
Yeah, and that's the
your
infrastructure.
environment,
And the electric companies said we have to invest 41 billion kroner in renewal of cables and transformer stations. And to me, it has nothing to do with electric cars anymore. No. Because electric car without power, forget it.
So we have to do less roads and more investment.
Investment in our infrastructure, yeah. So we can transport the power to the charging stations, yeah.
Yeah. And Charlotte, you had a remark for?
I just have a very simple suggestion for you. You need to go grocery shopping for your 3 teenagers.
And me.
No, you don't have to go grocery shopping. There is something called nemlig.com, or there is Føtex, or there is Bilka, or whatever. Yes, but they have groceries for many houses and many families. You know, it's these different companies who will you order the groceries and everything. So that's the solution for that, I think. And actually, some of these, when they do the deliveries in cities where there's a lot of people, sometimes they actually put them on bikes. So because it's easier for them to go through traffic and it's easier for them to park. So I think that's a way both for congestion and also for limiting CO2 emissions. Another thing is, I think, sharing cars. Since I'm a candidate here in Mariager, but I don't live in Mariager, I actually live on Sjælland. So when I go here, I either take the train or I rent a car it's a car sharing So that's another way where we can reduce congestion. And I'm a single person, and I don't use a car. Daily, I don't use a car, because I just take the train to go to work. But this is very easy for me then when I have to go here. The car is just somebody owns a car just a block away, and I can rent their car. So I think there are, and that's a market that is developing, and actually we also have to support that market. And just, yeah.
That's
maybe I
fine.
should-
I'll go back and ask you about stuff commercials. But also, you will say to me, Jens Peter, I should buy a bicycle with, what do you call it in English? The
Yes,
elcycle?
I'll just follow up on where do we get the energy from, because that's very, very important. Okay, part of it, we grow it on the fields. We distribute it as rye bread. We eat it, and we use it when we bicycle. Oh yes, but in Denmark, because I'm a city councillor, if I take my car, I will be paid about 60 cents per kilometer. If I take my bicycle, I'll be paid 7 cents per kilometer. And if you start calculating the energy I do spend riding my bicycle, it takes half of the 7 cents. And people start laughing when I say that. Of course, we need to be compensated for the energy we use when we are riding our bicycle. But people don't think that way. Okay, but of course we...
But thank you, but you will also say to me, I should buy a better bike.
No,
like Charlotte
I would
says.
just say about grocery shopping. In Denmark, 87% of all Danish households have less than 2 kilometers to grocery shopping. And you can actually bring a lot of stuff on your bicycle, and you can just go more times. And if you go and your 3 teenagers, very, very important, send them on the bicycle. Let them do the grocery shopping on the bicycle.
Yes, let's do more.
Yeah, of course.
I will. But first, I'll go home.
Or give them an empty place, or you go grocery
I'll
shopping.
go home and I'll say to them that we have now a solution. We have an agreement now. No, I'll ask Pedro to say a little thing about this e-commerce, because there we also see that I buy a dress who is lying in Holland, and then it should go very fast to me, so it's flight to Copenhagen, and then sent by I think car or lorry to Aarhus. Is that there we see it again? Will we have to accept this kind of e-commerce?
Well, I think you're picking nitty-gritty stuff, you know. I mean, it's funny, but it won't solve the world, you know, and it won't solve this issue. So, and that's one thing that I really would like people to get away from. We are constantly being thrown at, it's your fault, it's your responsibility. Charlotte, you're a good person because you rent
And
a
you
car.
ride a bike.
But for each car you rent, there are 10,000 new cars in India and in China. I'm not saying you should not be doing what you're doing. I'm just saying that's nothing compared to the challenge we have ahead. So I really want to take us back to the discussion where we leave the individual person alone and focus on what can really change.
What
And
would be the single best thing to do, in your opinion?
I think, well, when I was listening to Thomas, he was talking about energy, and when I was listening to Charlotte, she was talking about reducing. And I think this is something that we need to face. We need to reduce. And that's where the public policy should be going to. And it needs to come from the state as a public policy direction, giving people alternatives, building up those alternatives where reduction seems easier to face and not an individual choice that you're going to be judged upon by your neighbor.
But what can I do as politician then? What would you say? Go do this.
So many
And
things.
Jens Peter,
You know, in terms of aviation, now I'm talking about aviation terms. and I don't want to get into too many technical details, but one of the things that we have to face here in Europe is consolidation. We need to allow airlines to consolidate. If you compare United States with Europe, which is more or less a similar sized market, you have 3 main international airlines in the US. It's countless what we have here. Consolidation brings what? Brings more dynamics into the operation and less. If you look at the board in Copenhagen, you see tons of flights going simultaneously to London, and that's because the market is not consolidated.
Yeah.
So we need to allow consolidation to happen naturally, it will happen, and not block it. That's one thing. The other thing, if you think about congested airports like Copenhagen, they work with what's so-called slots. Okay, slots are moments in time where you can take off and land in a certain airport. Now, if one airline, if SAS decides, I am dropping this slot, immediately that slot can go back to the pool and be taken by another airline. If we want to reduce, then we should say, we need 3 slots to be freed to give 1 away. There are no ecological criteria associated to slots. The only way that you evaluate a slot is if it's used or not used. If you all of a sudden introduce a criteria of what is your load factor on this slot? Is it only for 50%? Well, if you're using this and the average flight load factor is 50%, sorry, we need it to be optimized. If we're using a slot, then we need it to be full, because that's the optimization of the resources that you have. And then maybe you find out that the ones that have 50% is the Copenhagen Aarhus or the Copenhagen Aalborg, because you have 4 airlines doing that flight. And obviously, they all compete for the same.
Well, then there's something about competition, but how much would the cut down be if we did use that politician?
That has been determined by the European Commission and all agreed by all the countries, and we need to get to 30% by 2030. So we're not getting there, and the worst thing is, like I mentioned to you, I have no government, no airline board knocking at Sky Expert and telling, I need you to help me getting there because my KPI is reducing that amount of flights or reducing that amount of...
What you're saying, the firms don't do it by themselves because of conditions they have.
The companies are not doing, the governments are not putting pressure. They are actually, if Lisbon does build a second airport in Lisbon, it's not to reduce, it's to increase. So there won't be anyone knocking at my door and saying, help me reduce, because the government is giving me the alternative to increase. So what I mean is, now it's left to Charlottes, to all the Charlottes in this world, to consciously take that step and say, you know what, I'm going to rent a car from my neighbors. By the way, in Portugal, the insurance is not ready for that. For example, private people cannot, I can lend you my car, but if you have an accident, then it was not me driving, so the insurance says bye-bye, it's your problem. So I guess, and even the windmills, in Portugal we have a lot of windmills. Now we have an issue. Nobody thought how to recycle the blades. I don't know if you have that problem here. And it's like, circular economy, where was it, And that amount of responsibility, that's something that, we should make sure that our politicians, so Charlotte is here and she's probably listening to it and taking, this probably very seriously. It's public policy, and I'm all for it. I'm all for the public policy to be deciding where to invest our public money. And every time I hear a state is supporting an airline, and it's the same airline doing the same kind of business like 20 years ago, 10 years ago, like 50 years ago, I'm like, what the heck? Should I feel guilty because I'm flying? You are giving me the opportunity to fly. You are giving me the 10 euro fare. You are giving me in Portugal, if you want to go to, let's say, the countryside by car or by train, it costs more than flying to Paris.
Yes. And Charlotte had one word, and after that I would like to hear Thomas again. Do you agree with Pedro that it's something to do with the costs? Charlotte. First Charlotte.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
I have a quick reply for that because it's so interesting.
Push.
What you talked about consolidation of airlines, I think that's really interesting, and also because we have these, in many countries we still have national airlines. In Denmark we have SAS, and that's also Norway and Sweden, and I guess that dates back to the 60s or something like that. And they're just, every quarter we see their results. And it's bad. It's going down, it's going down, it's going down. They have all these ideas of how to make them more efficient, but they keep losing money. And you know, we have to pay for that. It's taxpayers' money. We pay for that. So I think that if we should get rid of that, because like you were saying, of course it made sense in the 60s, because we needed to develop the whole sector. But now there's plenty of airlines. So I don't think we need it. They have to compete with private airlines.
It's very interesting to hear. I think Margrethe Vestager, our competition commissioner, who's a member of the party, would think that's very interesting what we are asking. Actually, are we doing something who has to plan the economy?
She is to blame.
We'll tell her, but I will ask Thomas to go further. And I think you have something with transportation of energy. Is power to X the solution?
Power to X is, the EU just has made a decision. No combustion engines in new vehicles from 35. Power to X is combustion. So where it go, I don't know. The problem is also that the production of new energy, new types of energy, needs a lot of old energy. When you want to produce new energy, to produce 100% new energy, you probably use 600% of old energy. And we still are in the same point, where does the energy come from? And going to your issue and all this reducing, I mean, first of all, people don't want to miss any living standards. You cannot cut down, and especially when parents have no control over their children and the children control their parents. That's the worst thing for us, because then it's more and more and more CO2. The other thing is that I am also working political in the lobbyist side. And we are the small ones, we don't have much money, and we lose 99% of the time to the big ones with a lot of money. The big companies, the big organizations, which a lot of money, give a lot of voices and give a lot of votes. And in my life, I say it clean, if it cannot supply politician votes, you out. That's one-to-one. No politician will take you serious if you cannot give them votes. And that's the big problem. As long politicians hang in votes instead of taking the chance and the risk to lose an election next time, we will not go further. Forget it. So to be honest, is all the things we discuss is change in society, change in mind, change in people not anymore wanting to make the big money. Hey,
so you're actually saying that as it is now, we should do more infrastructure and habits, try to big solutions. And all that politicians are doing, like Dan Jørgensen, our climate minister, is just sit and wait and say, but in 2025 we'll have electric cars and all problems are gone.
Yeah, I mean,
so they
mean,
do what Peter said. They do sheep it on all the Charlottes.
I'm always a little bit on the edge when I talk, yeah. But I've been talking to a lot of Danish politicians and also people in ministries, and I have a bolt, yeah, M16 bolt, yeah, and I have an M16 nut. Everybody understands what it is, but do everybody understand that the two can be fitted together? There, the problem appears because, I mean, then we are too technical. It's too technical to implement in politics. And I'm an engineer, so I have used years to downgrade my language from technical to children. And that's a big problem because you have to convey your information to the politicians so they understand. And then when they count the votes. And if you don't have votes, out. Bye. And there is a big industry or whatever is standing there. And we need to have a mental change in all this setup.
Well, actually I'll say there are two more who have a question, and then I'll ask if there's a question from the audience, because time runs. But now it was first the hands, and then it was yours. Sorry.
Thomas, you are spot on. The time frame, the time horizon for politicians is at maximum 4 years until the next election. And they try all the time to say things that will get them votes. And that's why nothing happens. Of course, they know it's important to say we need green transition, we need to put up goals, but when they come to the implementation, when they come to deciding we are going to place some wind turbines here, we are going to place some solar here, we will put restriction on car driving in a city center, they step back. That's the way it is. So the only way we can change things is that each citizen do what they really know is the good way to do it. You have to send clear signals to the politicians what you want them to do, and you have to prove it by acting. And when it comes to transportation, all of you can ride your bicycle. You don't have to wait for politicians to improve conditions. Of course, we shall improve conditions to have people change to bicycles, but you can start right now. Even if it's raining, I can tell you, I came up here, I only have 11 kilometers, but
well, we have at least a person who ran for parliament. So, Charlotte, is it all your fault?
well, I'm not there yet, right? So you can't blame me yet. Hanne, you are a politician.
Yes,
you have a voice. I don't have a voice yet. Well, I have a voice here, but
I couldn't ask for it.
I was just what you said, the implementation part, and I think that's very interesting because, for instance, I know this is not. I mean, windmills obviously they deliver the energy into the transportation sector. And for instance, I just read the other day that they were supposed to put windmills at Els here in Mariager, and then there was a large group of people who came together and said, we don't want the windmills here. And actually, the council, the city council, could decide whether or not to have these windmills. And somebody said to me, the city council should not be allowed to have a say in this. This should be done at government level, because they're the ones who have the overview of the whole country. They're the ones who know where will the windmills give enough energy or more energy. So I think, and that will be really, really difficult for me to say in my campaign, because obviously the people who are sitting here, they want to have a say. You know the saying, not in my backyard. So the politicians, they have to be brave. They have to say, we're going to have this plant or this windmill or whatever. And sorry guys, you don't have a say.
It's not the first time I've heard the question, where do we find brave politicians? We could ask if you have a question. If you have is there anyone who have a question? Yes, and if you ask them to say your name and what?
Hello, my name is Flemming Blikker. I'm a co-founder of a political party called Frihedslisten. We have an apple in our logo because when you need something healthy, you take fruit, and you can take a banana or an apple. Apple is actually grown in Denmark. Banana is transported halfway across the globe. So I agree in this transportation question that was raised. I disagree to a lot of the discussion going on. I think this gentleman is very much in the line of Frihedslisten as well, because it's each individual that can actually both vote and also do the changes to the behavior. But what I lack when you are discussing all of this is really this core thing, because you're all assuming that we need growth and we need more cars, and anyway there will be more cars in India and China. So because even if we get electrical cars, and I'll get to the point, even if we get electrical cars, there's a problem with electrical cars. We cannot take the strontium and the lithium and I don't think there's strontium actually, lithium and I can't remember. There's cobalt, which is not used so much anymore, but there's 4 very heavy environmental chemicals that is very difficult to mine and get into the cars. So even the people who is driving electrical cars, I think, electrical bicycles, should also think about how green those electrical bikes actually are. We need to change. We need to change people's behavior. We don't need just to change the new technology. We know when we're putting up these windmills that they are not greener than any of the other things. So the question to all of you, do you not think that you're discussing the wrong thing instead of actually going with Jens Peter and actually, each individual?
I got it. Is growth the answer to this? Is growth the answer, and is it then also we step back? Should we cut down, or should we do both? You'll all get a short reply on it. Thomas?
I mean, I think you had to hear what is been said, because we all say that growth is not the future. And now I ask you a question, because now you're going in chemistry of batteries, which is my area. Do you have a mobile phone? Do you have an iPad? Or yes, do you have a computer? Do you have kids? Do they have computers? Do you have a television? Do you have a microwave?
Well,
And the thing is that it's not only the electric cars. We talk about every electronic unit we use, also the cigarettes, the electronics. There is all kind of lithium in it, because they use it for power. And my way is also to find the way of recycling it. So I work with Stena Recycling about it, how to do this.
Growth in recycling
but the thing is, recycling of batteries today is extremely complicated and extremely expensive. And
so your short answer will be we should do growth in recycling.
yeah, I mean, everybody says to recycle. We have, for instance, a problem in the car sector.
I'll say, just in short, I'll say, you say the answer is recycling, and then I'll give the word to Pedro.
Yeah.
Well, it's your answer to this. Is growth the answer?
I don't know, maybe you weren't here when I said that everyone's talking about growth, and I actually gave ideas about how you can reduce growth in the area, in my sector. So I don't really know what you're talking about when it comes to me. So I think I gave already the answers about reducing, not growing. And I think I made a point with reducing.
You have. And Charles, do you also have?
What I hear you're saying is the discussion about growth in general. I mean, do we need a society growth? And I just...
Can you be my assistant in the future? I mean, and I think that's a whole different discussion, because that will take a long time to discuss whether, growth is that the right thing or whatever, economical growth. But I think, no, we're talking about growth is not the important thing, but what we need to we need to have the electric cars instead of the cars we have today. So I'm not saying that we need more cars, we just need more efficient cars. But that will create growth, I know, because producing things, that creates growth. But again, that is, changing the whole society. So for me, that's another question that we cannot answer in 5 minutes or 1 minute.
Thank you. And Jens Peter?
We need growth. Growth in life quality. And that will be different from nation to nation. Some poor countries, they need more goods and stuff like that. In countries like ours, we don't need more cars or all that kind. We need other things.
Sharing and
so it's
recycling.
growth in life quality we shall aim for.
I find that a good point. So recycling, more sharing, cut down where it's, we have, as you say, Petro, there are places where you just stand there like, why don't we cut that away? It's waste. So,
Actually, just wanted to say something about SAS.
ooh,
Yeah. I mean, I'm an airline geek since I was a child, right? And, back in the 60s, in the 50s, in the 40s, in the 70s, everyone was doing Air Sweden, Air Denmark, Air Norway. So SAS was nothing like that. SAS was Scandinavian airline system for 3 countries. That was, I don't know if you really understand that, but you were ahead of time. You said when public investment, it was the only one that was doing investment in the airline industry, creating airlines. You said, I don't need Air Denmark, I don't need Air Sweden, I don't need my flag as exclusive up there. I'm okay with being SAS. And that was an optimization of resources, of scale, that you said, we're doing this together. So SAS was ahead of its time when it was created. Unfortunately, it didn't quite pick up with how the world evolved, and it's a shame, but I will just state this. Still, this can be an example of how airline industry could develop in something much less national, much less about having my flag up there, and much more about how can I optimize this resource and make it work better. Now, back then was a matter of money and investment. Today, it can be something like making it better for the planet.
okay, and then we come also in the European dimension. I would say you have all actually stated that we should not allow, I would say that it's the green environment do not come from industry. That's the point you made. It comes from brave politicians. And I would say, I hope really that that you listening to us will say, okay, we'll do next time. We'll find some politicians who will be able to say we're not leaving it for the industry to get the environment better. Many thanks, and many thanks to the panel. Vil I lige blive stående et øjeblik? I'll take you.